In 1929, a group of young women marched down Fifth Avenue during the Easter Day parade in New York City. Each of them reached into her purse, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it, in full view of the cameras. The newspapers went wild. Headlines called them brave, feminists, rebels. But here is the part nobody told you. Every single one of those women was hired. The march was staged. The reporters were tipped off in advance. And the man behind the entire operation was not a political activist, not a feminist, and not a revolutionary. He was a publicist, a quiet, calculating nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he was being paid by the American Tobacco Company to make it socially acceptable for women to smoke in public. His name was Edward Bernays, and what he did next would reshape the modern world in ways you are still living inside of today. Edward Bernays was born in Vienna in 1891. His mother was Sigmund Freud's sister. His father's sister married Freud. He was doubly connected to the man who mapped the unconscious mind. And Bernays understood something that most people in business did not. You do not sell to the rational mind. You sell to the unconscious one. Freud had shown that human behavior is driven by hidden desires: sex, power, identity, fear of death. Bernays took that insight out of the therapy room and dropped it into the marketplace. A 2022 analysis published in the Journal of Historical Research and Marketing traced how Bernays systematically adapted psychoanalytic theory into commercial persuasion techniques between 1909 and 1955. He did not invent advertising. He invented something far more dangerous. He invented the engineering of consent. If that sentence does not unsettle you, read it again. The takeaway is blunt. Every system of influence you encounter today, political campaigns, corporate branding, social media algorithms, traces its DNA back to one man who believed the public was too irrational to be left to its own decisions. Back to those women on Fifth Avenue. The American Tobacco Company had a problem. Half the population, women, was an untapped market. Smoking in public was considered unladylike, even scandalous. George Washington Hill, the company president, wanted that to change. So he hired Bernays. Bernays did not run an ad. He did not put up a billboard. Instead, he consulted a psychoanalyst, Abraham Brill, and asked a single question: what does a cigarette mean to a woman's unconscious mind? Brill's answer: it is a symbol of male power, a torch of freedom. So Bernays staged the Easter parade stunt. He told the debutantes to call their cigarettes torches of freedom. He framed smoking not as a habit, but as an act of liberation. It worked. Within a year, cigarette sales to women skyrocketed. The taboo dissolved, not because the product changed, but because the meaning changed. Research from Robert Proctor at Stanford, published in his 2011 book Golden Holocaust, confirmed that Bernays' campaign was one of the most successful reframing operations in commercial history. He did not persuade women to smoke. He made them feel that smoking was who they already wanted to be. Here is the lesson. The most powerful manipulation never feels like manipulation. It feels like self-expression. You probably had bacon for breakfast at some point this week, or at least you associate bacon and eggs with a real American breakfast. That association is not natural. It was manufactured by Edward Bernays. In the 1920s, the Beechnut Packing Company hired Bernays to sell more bacon. Instead of advertising the product, Bernays went to a doctor and asked him a simple question: is a heavier breakfast better for health than a light one? The doctor said yes. Bernays then got 4,500 physicians to sign a statement recommending a hearty breakfast. He sent that statement to newspapers across the country, along with a suggestion that bacon and eggs was the ideal hearty meal. Overnight, bacon and eggs became what Americans eat for breakfast. Not because of nutritional science, because one man understood that people trust authority figures, especially doctors, and that a recommendation feels different from a sales pitch. A 2019 study in the journal Appetite confirmed what Bernays intuited: food choices are driven far more by social norms and perceived authority than by taste or nutrition. When people believe everyone does this, or experts say this, the behavior becomes automatic. The practical insight: whenever you catch yourself saying that is just what people do, pause. Ask who decided that. The answer is often more interesting and more disturbing than you expect. Now we enter darker territory. In 1954, the democratically elected president of Guatemala, Jacobo Arbenz, launched a land reform program. He wanted to redistribute unused farmland, much of it owned by the United Fruit Company, an American corporation, to poor Guatemalan farmers. United Fruit did not want to lose its land, so it hired Edward Bernays. Bernays did not lobby Congress. He did not file lawsuits. Instead, he launched a media campaign framing Arbenz as a communist sympathizer, a Soviet puppet threatening American security. He planted stories in major newspapers. He organized press junkets to Guatemala, designed to confirm the narrative he had already written. The CIA, influenced in part by the atmosphere Bernays helped create, launched Operation PBSUCCSS. Arbenz was overthrown. Guatemala descended into decades of civil war that killed over 200,000 people. Historian Larry Tai, in his 1998 biography The Father of Spin, documented how Bernays orchestrated the media narrative that provided political cover for the coup. He did not pull the trigger. He built the world in which pulling the trigger seemed reasonable. This is the darkest application of psychology in the 20th century, not in a lab, not in a prison, but in a boardroom. One man's understanding of fear, identity, and authority helped destroy a democracy. The lesson is not that all persuasion is evil. The lesson is that the tools of psychology are neutral, and the people who wield them are not always acting in your interest. Bernays lived to be 203 years old. He died in one interest habeas. By then, his techniques had become the invisible architecture of modern life. Every political campaign that uses focus groups, Bernays. Every brand that sells an identity instead of a product, Bernays. Every corporation that funds independent research to support its claims, Bernays. He wrote the playbook, and the playbook is still running. A 2021 meta-analysis in Psychological Science in the Public Interest examined modern persuasion techniques across advertising, political messaging, and social media design. The researchers found that the most effective strategies still rely on the same principles Bernays codified a century ago: appeal to identity, leverage authority, create social proof, and never let the audience feel like they are being persuaded. Social media did not invent manipulation. It simply automated what Bernays did by hand. So, what do you do with this knowledge? First, recognize the pattern. Whenever a message makes you feel something before you think something, that is by design. Emotional arousal is the entry point for every persuasion technique Bernays pioneered. Second, ask who benefits, not who is speaking, but who is paying the speaker. Bernays never appeared in his own campaigns. The doctor recommending bacon had no idea he was part of a marketing operation. Follow the money and you will find the architect. Third, study the history. The reason manipulation works so well is that most people do not believe it is happening to them. A 2020 study in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology found that people who scored highest on media literacy were significantly more resistant to framing effects, not because they were smarter, but because they had learned to see the frame. You are not immune to manipulation. No one is. But the moment you understand the machinery, it loses some of its power over you. Edward Bernays showed the world that you do not need force to control people. You just need to understand what they already want, and then hand it to them in a package that serves your interests. He called it public relations. The rest of us should call it what it is. And the next time you feel absolutely certain about something, certain enough that questioning it feels uncomfortable, that is exactly the moment to ask, who made me feel this way and why? That is the human code, and now you can see it.